read a book if you were not black, you realize that while everyone encounters some form of prejudice, Dad provides a historical and deeply significant perspective on the evolution of racism, one that can only be fully understood through the experience of being black in America. It is therefore a profound honor for me to serve as your mistress of ceremony, paying tribute to not only my father's experiences, but also to the stories of others across all segments of our society.
You're black. Tell me some things that happened to you, and you know they happened to you because you're black.
It seeks to bridge the gap of the racial divide in America.
The race issue has permeated every facet of our lives.
The majority of white America does not understand.
All signs tell us it is possible and imperative that we learn a brave and startling truth. And when we come to it, to the day of peacemaking, when we release our fingers from fists of hostility and allow the pure air to cool our palms, when we let the rifles fall from our shoulders and children dress their dolls in flags of truce, and when landmines of death have been removed and the age can walk into the evenings of peace. When religious ritual is not perfumed by the incense of burning flesh, and childhood dreams are not kicked awake by nightmares of abuse. When we come to it, we, this people, on this wayward, floating body, created on the earth, on this earth, have the power to fashion for this earth a climate where every man and every woman can live freely without piety, without crippling fear. When we come to it, we must confess that we are the possible, we are the miraculous, the true wonder of the world. That is when, and only when, we come to it. It is my privilege, it has been my privilege and pleasure to work alongside with this brilliant, wonderful man who picked up his dream after 80 years, and I watched it come to fruition. And I'm glad to be a part of this beautiful celebration. And now, the one that you've been waiting for, the brilliant, miraculous, over-the-top man in the world, the author of If You Were Not Black, Curtis Jackson.
You know, I'm very sure that I agitated my parents a lot as I was coming along, because I grew up in segregation. This segregation didn't make sense to me. And so I would always ask, well, why? You know, why were we going through these kinds of things? Why can't we have that? Why can't we go there? And nobody was able to answer those questions. But what happened as a result of coming along, another time I came along, was that I learned to doff hats, you know, the black-white environment, and I learned to shuffle things. Because what I had been taught in the system, you know, that Columbus discovered America. I wonder what the American Indians were doing when Columbus discovered America. But it made no sense as I went along that all of the things that I had encountered was to make me think, not only was I inferior, but I was genetically altered. You know, I couldn't do anything about it because genetically I was inferior. And as I went through the different things, I realized that when I was between the ages of 17 to 20, I was a person, if certain things had happened at that time, I was ready to fight. I was ready to do the battle, you know? And I could have been really assassinated early in my life. And I remember something that my mom told me one time. I said, well, because the way Way Crossing is divided up, in the center of the town, there was basically a white house structure, and then you had blacks on different sides. And I wanted to go across to the other side, and I remember saying to my mom, I said, well, I could go down to Albany Avenue and walk across the railroad. She said, you can't do that. I said, why can't I do that? She said, because you could come up missing. Mind you now, that was the same year that Emmett Till was killed, but even though I knew about those kinds of things, I didn't know that really I could have been. And you know what? Nothing would have been done about it. I used to wonder when they were talking about taking black people to court. It was a joke to me. I say, you know, it's a white jury. It's a black person. So what are they going to do different from the things that are done on the street? I saw some things that really made me sad and angry at the same time. I saw people battered with, policemen used to carry these long rods on the side. I've seen people's heads bashed in with those rods. I've seen people dragged down Oak Street by their belt while they were bleeding. So you can imagine what I wanted to do as a 15-year-old to observe it. But I had also learned that nothing was going to be done. And so that kind of kept me off the road to really get to the place where I would really be hurt. But because I played, I'm surprised at that picture there, okay? I used to play in a band. Lewis Hamilton and his Hamptones. And because I went all these different places, I saw a lot of different things in these places. And see, I don't think anybody in here could even talk about a lynching, you know, because it doesn't, you know, you just read it in history. But to go into a place where somebody has been lynched and the body has been there for days in that place, you smell that aroma in the air. It's another kind of experience. So what happens is more than anger. You just say, how am I going to get back? And I just think of I'll cite the whole thing of that. But you can draw your own conclusion. I was coming back from a band trip we had played. It was foggy. It was in the northern part of Florida, near the Georgia line. And it was really foggy, and because the fog was so thick, you could see this flashing light way down the highway. And so the man who was in charge of that particular band I was in slowed up because he knew he was treading on dangerous ground to drive fast. And so he slowed up, and as he slowed up, they pulled around that road, and the man got out the car, and he had a deputy with him who had a long flashlight. They must have had about 4 or 6 of those things in it. And he said, boy, I'm already just inside. He asked the man who was driving, boy, didn't you hear that siren and see that light? And so the man played the black game. Yes, sir. And I'm really just really angry because there are 2 of them and 8 of us. So what's in my mind is it's 2 of y'all, but it's 8 of us, and there's a big ditch right on the other side. That's what was in my mind. But the man who was in charge of that band knew what we were up against, and so he played that game. And I guess that's the thing that caused me to seed all through my life, playing those kinds of games, knowing that I shouldn't have to play those kinds of games. And then, of all of the things that have happened to me, I'm gonna stop and tell you about 3 of them, okay? Because I've had scores of black, white encounters. Scores of them. Matter of fact, I can write 6 more books on those things. But I'll tell you now, 3 of them, because those 3 affected my family. I mean, I just went along with the thing because you could do things to me, but things that affected my family adversely, those were the things that stayed in me. And I need to pray over those things more because they still are in my mind. And I said, I'm so glad to see people here because we're in the School of Public Health at the same time. That's the reason when I saw Trump doing some things about government, and I saw he moved all those people out of public health, I had a course in administrative epidemiology, and I knew what outcome that was going to be with all those people being removed. Well, I'm not even going to go there. The thing that had happened, I had helped to write a grant for a country in Africa, Cameroon. And I had to write the grant. It was a successful grant. It was funded. They sent 3 doctors to spend time with me over time in Chapel Hill. I guess to see whether all the stuff I had written, I knew what I was doing. So they sent these 3 people, and they didn't come at the same time. I don't know if you remember, there was one Dr. Njiku, Dr. Mbam, and Dr. Mbaka. Those were the 3 persons who came. And as a result of going out on the course with me, as I went through the different places, they came to the conclusion that I could run that program. Even though the program was going to be instituted in the Anglophone and the Francophone section of the Carrboro. And they signed off on it. And so we went through a lot of things. I took my family to get all of the shots and all of that stuff. Because I had gone to the point of knowing what I was really doing. 2 weeks before we were to depart, it comes up that there's a fellow from the World Health Organization, who's a white male, who's the last person to sign off on it. And he didn't sign off on it, and he said that the papers say that the chief of party, and I would have been chief of party, the chief of party has to be at level 4 French. Now, level 4 French was not just being bilingual, because I was already past level 2 French, just the stuff I knew. And because of that, what that man did caused me not to be able to take my family into an environment where they could experience some things that I knew they would never experience in America. See, because when I wrote the book, If You Were Not Black, I should have put on the If You Were Not Black America. Because what I finally just read up on finally was that woven into the fabric of the nation were some things that really didn't make sense, but it was woven in there to keep black people always down. I mean, that's the design. The design is to keep black people down always. And I remember I was in my 20s when I read a book by W. Du Bois. And he had written out all these things that I knew this was right. This man had some experience, and I wished I had the experience of reading his book before that. Because the design is right now, and that's the reason I wanted not just young people, but people in general, black boys and girls too. But I want them to see this stuff is going on right now. And you can help to alter it by doing this. And so, if you should read through the book, If You Were Not Black, I made up in my mind trying to find some people that people would know locally. I could have gotten people from New York or California, but I wanted people to identify with some people that they already know. And what I'm telling you, these people can tell you because they're experiencing the same thing right now. And it's the absolute truth. That's the reason you have to be aware of what's going on around you. You just can't take for granted people are always going to do, I don't know, maybe some people didn't see that, but there's a page in the book that talks about don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. Amen. That's the truth. Because there's some people that you will think are on your side. And they will lie to you too. So you have to be aware of all of the things that are going on, and you have to keep yourself geared up for it. You got to, like I said, roll with the punches. You got to learn to roll with the punches. You got to learn to dock the hat. Because that one thing that happens, don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. That's what you have to do. That was one thing that affected my family. And so I was really upset about that one. Another thing that happened was I worked in an environment where, a fellow had got a promotion in an environment, and I didn't know he had done this. People who were in public health would know this. We used to talk about solid money, AHEC money. I was funding on AHEC money, so I could stay on that till Jesus comes, because it was solid money. But what this man had done he had gone into the office where the records were kept, and he took my name off of the solid funds and put his friend's name on the solid fund. And so it just went by for years. And I didn't know that. I only came to that conclusion when my wife got very ill. And I said, well, I'm going to retire and take care of my wife. And when I went to retire, they told me I didn't have enough hours in. I knew something was wrong with that. I mean, I had more than 20 years, so what is this about? And that's when some ladies told me, Mr. Jackson, this is what happened. They told me who the fellow was who changed my name on the money. What was I going to do? I couldn't fight him. Who was going to believe what I was saying? I mean, even though it's documented what he did, they were not going to change that. Plus, he had gone. I didn't have money to fight him. So that's number 2 thing that happened to me that I was really upset about because it affected my family. And even though I told you scores of things that happened, I'm just going to tell you one more. When I was in the School of Public Health, and I had gone through, got a degree, I did some stuff in Miami, and I was really boosted up because of what I had done in the Dade County Department of Public Health. The place had 17 municipalities, and I had gone to all those municipalities while I was doing my field work. But the thing that happened was when I was in the School of Public Health and I had enrolled in the doctoral program, mind you, I got 3 kids on the wife. So I say, okay, I don't have any more funds coming in, so I'm gonna have to work a year, to get enough money to take care of family. And so they were okay with that. Dr. Greenberg wasn't alive then, but he had told me, Curtis, I want you to get your doctorate. And so I enrolled in the doctoral program. I started, and because I took that year, I didn't think that was a big deal. I had helped other people in the program do their dissertations. I had proof dissertations. I had done all that stuff. When I went back to go into the program, there was a man who, I think he might still be there. There was a man there who told me that I couldn't come back into the program. And in order to even be competitive, to even be thought about, I had to take 9 hours in the undergraduate program. I mean, things that I had taught myself to students, I got to go 9 hours, so I knew what that deal was about. So I was seething again. But I knew I could not combat that man because of who he was, the positions he held, and the position I held. But as I reflect upon that, I really have to pray over that and forgive those people in those 3 situations. Even though, like I say, I encountered a lot of stuff out here, but I'm trying to let younger people understand these are some of the battles that you fight. And don't do anything silly like I was going to do with those 2 guys when we were in that car. Don't do things silly. Just know this is how the system works. But I went on through, and because I stayed lined up with what I was doing, and I had good friends around me. I can think here. My friends over here, my friend here who wrote that beautiful book. I still had supportive people around me. And because I had supportive people around me, I was able to do things that helped the environment I was in, the people I was in, and the people supported me. Because I wouldn't have been able to do a lot of things that had I not gotten support from people like you. So I want you to know that as you read the book, If You Were Not Black, I learned something by going to other countries. A lot of people thought that, well, a lot of people not. A lot of black people in America think that, well, this is the black people thing. But what it is that it's ingrained in the system. And you gotta learn how to get out of what's ingrained in the system. I was in one country, I'm not gonna call all the country, but I was in a place. And unlike every place I had gone around America, they had things in this church I had gone to. And there was Mary holding Jesus. And both of them were black. Mary and Jesus were black. And then I was in a place in India. I think it was Bhubaneswar. It was in India, okay. I was in India, and I stood beside a structure, a huge structure. And as I looked up, I looked at how the structure had been manipulated. They had broken the lips off, the nose, and the ears. I knew what that was about. Someplace in the history of that country, black people had owned all that stuff and had done all these things. But if I never would have read about that in the books that I've been reading in America. That never would have been shown to me. And that's what's happening now. And that's the reason you people who are here have to really help young people who are going through these things, go through them and prepare themselves adequately. Because there are some people who really want to maintain a status quo. And if you don't believe it, you read the stuff that's written. I mean, I read some things in our historical high order schools, things that's in Harvard, Yale, Princeton. You can't believe all of that stuff. You got to realize there's some people who have been places and who have written some things over and beyond the stuff that you read there. So what I want you to do, because you're here to support me, I want you to touch the lives of other people so that when they get to my age, they will have a different view. And not only will they have a different view, they have some money in their pockets. Because it's possible to do. It's possible to do. So as I come and I look at you who are gathered here to help me with the side of this book, I want you to know how much I appreciate you. I want to take this for granted. I want you to know how much I appreciate you. And in addition to that, I want you to know that at any time I can be of help. Let me know. And I thank you so much. Any questions?